Hi, I'm Renny Hartman again, and this is Surviving Savannah, which, when I first saw the book, I had absolutely no idea what the book was about or why I might be reading it. But actually, this is about the loss of a huge steamship out of the South. In the South, they call the Southern Titanic. The steamship was built in New York and was evidently quite huge. It was a paddle wheeler and was leaving Savannah. For people leaving the South during the tremendous heat of the South, they were going to stay one night in, and then only have, they were going to spend one night, more night on land, and then they were going to have one night on the ship itself before they got into New York. And the family that we're following, they were going to be taking a train and wagons to Sarasota, so that's where they could spend their cooler summer. But the ship blows up because it's got double boilers, and one of the engineers lets one of the boilers get empty. And when he puts cold water into the boiler, the ship blows up and sinks within about half an hour. And a good part of the book follows families. Two of them are historical, or exactly what happened to them is not as detailed or known in real life, perhaps, as they are depicted in the book. But one group was at sea for a full day, and one was at sea for 5 days and lost a lot of people because there was no protection, no food, no water. They were on things like leftover pieces of the deck, or other things that they could hang on to. But it talks about the South at the time, and also, like The Stolen Lady, in a way, goes back and forth between the current situation and the historical situation. In the current situation, someone has found the ship that's 100 feet down, about 30 feet off the coast, and has not been seen for 200 years. But since many famous families for Savannah was on it, it was very historically interesting, and they want to present a museum piece and use pieces that have been brought up. So that involves diving, how you would reconstruct and save material that has been in the water for 200 years, finding china, finding gold and silver. And at the time, evidently, when the wealthy people left and went someplace, they not only took clothes in a trunk, they took all their china, they took all their linens, they took their curtains, they took everything that they have in their current house to move to where they're going to be staying for the summer or the fall or the winter or whatever it is. So a tremendous amount of material sunk when the Savannah went down, and of course has survived in some way or another, but obviously in odd kind of situations. For instance, some of the trunks exist, but only their iron ribs sit because whatever was wooden in the trunk has vanished, or whatever was leather in the trunk has vanished and disappeared. And the young woman who is our central character in the book is going through a long period of losing a good friend of hers that she later finds out actually is a direct descendant of one of the families that went down on the Savannah 200 years before. And she finds herself in finding the remains of this ship, and how she psychologically is able to overcome her mourning and her loss that she has felt for a friend of hers. And also it shows the ways that museums put material together and how things are found and lost. For instance, in one of the current events, they are looking for background to one of the families that they just don't seem to be able to find, and then locate a house in Savannah that is one of the houses that's preserved because of its ancient history, but was sold and redecorated, but material was left in the attic that nobody had moved. And when they go up in the attic, they find all kinds of things, from letters, deeds, diaries, and material from a family from 200 years before, almost all the way down to the present, that the people that left the house just had abandoned. And so they were able to take that and work that into the history of the loss of the ship itself, because they could go back that far tracing family history. Now, Savannah, I know, is a famous, lovely, beautiful southern city. I have never been there. I have read The Evil on the Side of the 12 o'clock, where you have white magic, and after 12 o'clock you have black magic. And we've had movies set there. And this might be a book that would lend itself to an interesting movie also, especially using the historical background, where they go from house to house and tell you when it was built, how it was built, why it looks the way it looks, why it's on certain squares in the city, and how Savannah industrialized and became famous. And one of the problems with the ship was it was making the city famous, and it had traveled slightly before, just the way when the Hindenburg went down. The Hindenburg actually had gone back and forth a couple or more times before it blew up in Lakehurst, New Jersey. So the ship, the Savannah, was not on a maiden voyage, but was lost because steamships at the time were just really beginning. Trains, steam engines at the time were really just beginning. If you go back and look at the beginning of trains, they blew up all the time. I don't know that you could develop train systems today the way we are very particular about safety and making sure everybody is protected. But in the beginning, trains had terrible accidents frequently. So this ship is not unusual in the sense that ships of its kind had lots of accidents. Since I live in New Jersey, I know that the New Jersey coast probably has the most ship sinkings along the coastal waters of the United States than any other state in the United States. But I don't know that we have a famous ship like this. We did have the Morro Castle, which beached in Asbury Park. And from the Morro Castle, we get the interesting idea that so many people came to see it that the mayor created one-way streets. And that's where one-way streets actually come from. The Savannah had been, in some ways, forgotten because it was 200 years previously. We tend to have short memories and short interests and have a hard time going back and looking at history too far away. But everybody in this book are museum-oriented, history-oriented, and Southern culture-oriented. And I found the book really quite interesting and had no idea what I was going to be reading when I picked it up.